Ladies and gentlemen, dear Rancha, first of all, my apologies for being late, but this is probably a sign of all the topics we covered and how intensive our discussions were. We could have gone on for a couple of hours, I believe, until late in the evening. I'm extremely happy to be able to welcome you here in Vienna. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I know that we should have met already quite some time in the past, I believe last year in Alpbach, but COVID-19 sort of had other plans with us, all of us, I believe. But I hope, and I believe today we discuss several formats where we can meet again in the future, and many topics where we can reinforce our cooperation. We had a wide range of issues reaching from COVID-19, European affairs, Russia, Turkey, Mediterranean, Latin America, you name it. But obviously, first of all, most important focus for all of us is both of our countries and all of us in Europe have been hit very hard by the pandemic. And I believe we all know that the next couple of weeks are still going to be tough for all of us psychologically until the vaccination project really picks up. But I think for summer, things will look a lot brighter than they do today. And then the main focus for us, and I believe here I can talk for both of us, will be obviously to restart our economies. We have only seen the tip of the iceberg as far as the social economic consequences of this pandemic are concerned, and we all have this common effort ahead of us to kickstart again our economies. Trade between Spain and Austria has been very positive before COVID-19. It had obviously slowed down, but I'm very hopeful that we not only can go back to the positive development we had, but do even better than we did in the past. And the second thing which Spain and Austria have in common, we are two countries where tourism is a very important part of our economy. And here we hope that this summer there will be a way back to normality, and I believe the key ticket to return to normality from our perspective is the digital green pass, or immunity pass, if you wish to call it, which we are working on in Brussels. I'm very much looking forward to the proposal Commission will table, and I believe that we all, as European member states, should work as quickly as possible to get this pass up and running so that our people can have a renewed taste of freedom again as soon as possible. We also discussed, we are very much focused for the time being on internal issues about vaccination, fighting the pandemic within the European Union. But Spain and Austria have in common that they have very strong bounds and boundaries with neighborhoods. And we know that there shouldn't be a vaccination nationalism, vaccine nationalism within Europe. We have to take care of our neighborhoods. We have to take care of third countries. We are export nations. I can speak for Austria. 6 out of 10 euros we earn through exports. So it's a question of necessity that we also get the other countries, give them access to vaccines. At the end of the day, in a pandemic, nobody's safe until everybody is safe. For us, the focus is obviously the Western Balkans, where we will have common efforts, Eastern Partnership, but I understand that we have our partners in North Africa, in Venezuela. This is something where I believe Europe can do a lot of good, and we shouldn't be embarking on a 100% navel gazing during this pandemic, but we have to be aware that there are other countries outside of the European Union are looking at us and waiting for our help. And one further, if I may mention one further topic, which is very close to the Austrian heart, is the Western Balkans enlargement process. Here I know that we have a strong partner in Madrid. This is a region which is surrounded by EU member states. It's a clear European region. EU integration is incomplete, from my perspective, as long as these countries have not joined the European Union. 2020 has been a year where a little bit lost for this region. And we have to make sure that 2021, this doesn't happen again. We cannot afford another lost year for the Western Balkans. The biggest issue now is obviously opening of accession negotiations with Northern Macedonia and Albania. but we have other issues in other countries which we have to take care about. And I'm very happy to know that Madrid is a strong brother in arms, sister in arms with us on this issue. So thank you again, Ranfa, that you're here. It's really a pleasure, and I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I'm very happy to be in Vienna. This is my first official visit to Austria in my capacity as Foreign Minister of Spain. Of course, we've seen each other and we've talked to each other, and we've been Zooming over the last year, but I wanted to come for 3 reasons. First, because we have all European Union member states built a strategy to respond to the COVID, and I think it's important that we keep doing this as a strong European Union. We've given COVID a European economic response through the European Recovery Fund, which we have built together: more solidarity, more responsibility, greater European strength. We've done this to develop vaccines. In less than 1 year, the public-private investments to develop a vaccine have worked, and I think we should put this into perspective, given how long it's taken in the past to build, to invent, to discover a vaccine. In this case, a European exercise of solidarity with financing from the public sector, working with pharmaceutical companies has delivered vaccines, and therefore we should continue on those course. 3, to make sure that vaccines are produced and delivered to European citizens, and doing this in an equitable manner. All European citizens are starting at the same time. Of course, we know that European citizens are tired, and we obviously understand fully why they are tired, but we are at the point where, with patience and responsibility, I am sure that we can, in the next months, start to see the light. We've done this, as I said, on the financial and economic side. On the vaccination side, we also have to do this on the vaccination certificates, the green immunity passes, as you mentioned. We are a very strong believer in European Union vaccination certifications or immunization certifications, as we think that while we do this in the EU, we should also push this in the OECD, because there are many members of the international community that like to exercise mobility in Austria and in Spain, and we would like them to be associated to one mobility system post-pandemic. Obviously, the second reason for my coming here is to discuss the conference on the future of Europe. How can we build greater European resilience? We have learned that unity in Europe pays to face crisis. This will not be the last time we face a crisis. We need to understand how we can continue to build this resilience, and we both will have an opportunity, Austria and Spain, to work together with the Slovenian presidency of the European Union in the next 6 months to build this greater European resilience. The third reason for coming here is obviously to make sure that Southern Europe looks more at the eastern neighborhood of the European Union, and Central and Eastern Europe looks more at the southern neighborhood of the European Union. And this is what we have discovered today. I have obviously shared with Alexander the priority that the Western Balkans represent for Spain, the fact that we believe in the European perspective of the Western Balkans, and that we need to work together to make sure this European perspective advances with those that are further ahead, Albania and Northern Macedonia, but also with the rest of the countries that aspire to become members of the European Union. By the same token, I have enormously appreciated, Alexander, your also interest in the southern neighborhood of the European Union, in working together to build a closer relationship with countries like Morocco, like Algeria, Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, Mauritania, countries that are strategic for the European Union, whether it's to fight climate change, to advance youth employment, to foster greater people-to-people contacts, also to manage migration, to do this from core responsibility, working hand in hand, working to make sure that we do this from a partnership approach. I really have appreciated your hospitality. Of course, there are many other issues we've discussed this morning, from Russia to Turkey. We've discussed Latin America. We've discussed a number of trade agreements like Mexico and Chile that are moving forward. I am sure that over the next months we will have an opportunity to further work together to advance those interests.
Thank you very much. I might add that we will see each other again on Monday. On Monday we have a common council meeting with the Ministers of Interior on exactly also partly on this southern neighborhood, where you mentioned rightly that there's also the issue of migration, where Spain has a great deal of experience it can share with the other partners, where Austria is an affected country because many of the migration routes cross through this to the Austrian territory. And I believe this is a good way together to do exactly what we agreed already in 2018, to enhance and increase our cooperation with the countries of origin and the country of transit in the southern Mediterranean. Thank you.
Yeah. Time permits, quick question. We start with Austrian Press Agency, please.
My name is Edgar Schütz from the Austrian Press Agency. First, I have a question for both ministers, because you mentioned already that there shouldn't be nationalism concerning the pandemic crisis. But today in a press conference, Austrian Federal Chancellor Sebastian Kurz criticized the fact that there was a very unequal distribution of coronavirus vaccines in the European Union, because the countries were able to conduct collateral negotiations with pharma companies in the so-called steering board of the EU. And he said it was like in an Oriental bazaar. So what do you think about this, and could this become a big problem for the cohesion of European Union? And then there is a second question, it's for Senora González. Recently said that the case of Catalonia cannot be resolved by the courts, but that there must be a political solution. So what can a political solution could look like? And from your origin, you come from the Basque country, which is, let's say, also a minority region in Spain, and we know about the terrorism we had there years ago. So do you have a certain understanding of the goals of Catalan separatists?
May I start maybe? First of all, the thing which is important is to say that we agree and think it was a very positive approach to this common EU approach, or the approach of the European Union we adopted last year, to have a common policy towards the pharmaceutical industry to ensure that this continent, this European Union, has access to enough vaccine. But yes, I mean, there are always lessons learned. This is the first pandemic, the first time we're doing everything. That sometimes we forget it. It's the first time. Everything we do for the first time. So nothing is perfect, and I believe that Austria is very strongly behind this common approach. And when you have the feeling that some member states maybe have a different approach, then obviously question marks are raised. But it doesn't mean that the common approach per se is not the right approach. But there are always lessons learned, and the next pandemic we will do it better.
Well, for Spain, the strategy that we have privileged is the European strategy. We develop vaccines together, we purchase together, and we immunize together. For two reasons. One has to do with equity, making sure that all European citizens have the same opportunities, that we don't have first-class citizens and second-class citizens and third-class citizens. But number two, also because we think it's the most efficient way, is the most efficient to face a pandemic. I often say that no one will be safe until everyone is safe And this is why we've got an interest in making sure every citizen in Europe is immunized according to the rules. Of course, in all of this, we also have found areas where we could improve, and at least on our side, ready to improve, with a very strong support for the European Commission as the central place to advance this joint European approach to vaccines. I also want to say that as we do this for European citizens, we also have to think of non-European citizens. And we believe that Europe should send a clear signal to third countries also that we will also exercise solidarity as regards them, because we know that it is also solidarity that will work better to protect European citizens. On Catalonia, I would say two things. The first thing I would say is that what we have learned the hard way is that unilateralism is incompatible with democracy. That democracy is based on a compact, on a pact, that you cannot break this pact unilaterally and that you cannot impose democracy unilaterally. And this is the harsh lesson of these last years. This is why the government of Spain has extended a hand to all Catalans to start a dialogue, to come around the table, to start a dialogue, to solve the grievances that some Catalans may have. And let me tell you that if there is one lesson from the last Catalan elections, is that the party who won the elections is precisely the party that was standing for the reconciliation of all Catalans, for the coming together of all Catalans, and for dialogue as the means to address differences that exist. This is where the government is. We have extended a hand, and we very much hope that the hand will be taken and that everyone will come to a table and discuss.
The next question goes to Mr. Cruz from ELSA.
Antonio Sánchez with the Spanish News Agency. Encantado de saludarla.
Pueden preguntar en
No, it's okay for respect to the college. Austria had quite roundly rejected the European Union Mercosur agreement, arguing that it poses a risk for the climate targets and responsibility of the European Union. Now, I guess this is one of the topics you have discussed today. Have you found common ground? Have you somehow convinced Austria not to block the deal, taking that Spain is one of the member states that more strongly has supported? The same question for Mr. Schallenberg. Do you think it is still possible to save the current agreement with some minor adjustment, or it is going to be necessary to reopen it? To change it completely, taking that it took 20 years to close this deal, and that China is probably rubbing the hands and waiting for the European Union to fail on this in order to get over the region. And a third question for you, Mr. Schallenberg, in different topic regarding COVID and tourism. Germany has taken out of its risk list 5 Spanish regions, among them Baleares and Valencia. Do you see a chance for Austria to do so in the next days before the Easter holiday, so Austrian can go to, for instance, Mallorca and get sun, highly needed sun? Thank you.
I will let you discuss how much sun the Austrians need.
We all need vitamin D desperately, especially in this area. No. Maybe just on the travel warning. We are obviously, as foreign ministers, it's not our job description to inhibit the mobility of people. This is a contradiction per se. And it wasn't easily done that last March we started embarking on this process. Yes, we, as nearly all other member states, we have a very global travel warning, actually for the whole planet. And we are very restrictive because we still believe the mobility for the time being, as long as vaccination hasn't proceeded more, is still combined, or there's still risks inherent to any movement, to any tourism. So I would be hesitant to make any provisions for Eastern. I would hope, I put all my hopes on summer, and I put my hopes also for the Austrian tourism on summer especially. Whether Eastern is already a benchmark we can cross is to be seen. I have my doubts. On Mercosur, I have to say, Arantxa did her best to convince me. Didn't quite get there yet. No, I mean, in a more serious note, the Austrian government program says very clearly that the Mercosur agreement as it stands now will not be ratified by Austria. We're not the only member state saying that. Having said so, I want to underline that Austria is a country which is very much in favor of free trade. We are an export nation. We, as I already pointed out, earn 6 out of 10 euros through exportation. And we need these kind of free trade agreements. We need these kind of rules-based mechanisms reaching beyond the European Union. But, as I believe everybody in this room is aware, there are issues such as environmental issues, social issues, and trade issues as well, which are still open and which makes the agreement for us, for a couple of member states, not acceptable as it stands. I believe there are different ways of proceeding, and we are here also very much in the hands of the Portuguese EU presidency, who I understand will bring forward proposals how to go about it.
So on the EU-Mercosur agreement, I think there are 2 issues on which Austria and Spain agree, and I want to focus on where we agree. We agree that open trade is essential for the European economy. 6 out of 10 euros in the case of Austria is 2/3 of European growth that will come from outside the European Union. So open trade is essential to Europe's growth and jobs. This is the first issue on which we agree. And we have to repeat this because sometimes we forget what open trade is about. Now, we also agree, and both for Austria as well as for Spain this is important, is that open trade should not come at the expense of sustainability, and it should not come at the expense of labor rights. And this is why we have fought to make sure that the EU-Mercosur agreement has strong chapters on sustainability and strong chapters on labor conditions, because we think that it has to be more open trade, but also more sustainability and better labor conditions. Now, we are in a situation where some European Union member states think this agreement can be improved. Well, let's look at where it can be improved. But if this can be improved, for example, on the sustainability chapter, I think it would be good to do that. But again, it's not trade at the expense of, it's open trade, more open trade, and also respect for sustainability as well as respect for labor conditions. This is how we work in Europe.
Yeah. We're going to have the last question. Austrian Public Broadcasting.
So I have one question each. First for Minister González. How will Spain proceed with the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine? And for Minister Schallenberg, looking at the infection rates in Hungary and the other neighbor states in the east, will there be more strict controls on the borders? Thanks.
So on AstraZeneca, like with the rest of the vaccines, our first port of call is approval by the European Medical Agency. Second is approval by the Spanish agency, and then 3, a determination of which age groups should this vaccine be used with. And we rather do this at the national level, although we are a very decentralized country where every autonomous community has its own immunization plans. But we rather have first European approval, then Spanish approval, and then a definition at the Spanish level of which age groups should the vaccine be used for. This is what we had up until now. There are some questions that have been raised concerning the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine for certain age groups that the health minister is discussing at the moment with the different autonomous regions in Spain in order to get to one point of view, which would certainly be the preferred course of action on the side of the government.
Well, on your question whether further travel restrictions are envisaged, I would say you can never exclude anything. I don't expect it because we already have very strict rules applying, and we have even reinforced them as far as commuters are concerned. So for the time being, I wouldn't say that this is something which is necessary because we have already a strict set of rules which are applying to everybody who crosses the Austrian borders.
This concludes the briefing. Thank you very much.